Okay, sorry about that. We are back. We're going to pick it right back up on the Power Lunch. Ben, we were talking about how tech, how technology is great timing for the sound to go out. How technology is really impacting HR and employee experience, and how that's going to change management and leadership really kind of in the future. And you were talking about this AI, the robot, and how that's sort of standardizing some things in processes and in HR. But go ahead and pick up where what you were talking about. Apologize.
Yeah, I think on the employee experience is starting to really replicate the consumer experience, the type of digital experience that we have in our normal lives. You know, we can do things on our mobile phone that are just absolutely incredible these days. So why does that need to stop when we walk into an organization and we go back to really old school ways of doing things? So I think where organizations can, and they have the resources to, an investment in technology, it solves a lot of pain points within that employee experience. So we can make things more connected, more seamless, and just generally better quality experiences. It could be navigating payroll, our benefits. It could be our onboarding experience. All manner of different touch points can come into play and say, okay, you know, learning experiences, micro learning, all kinds of different things are now coming in to really make a fundamental difference, I think. And it changes the nature of organizations. You know, things. I think the challenge in the future will be, what do we do offline to complement the online? Because we could take too much of it online, and we need to start bringing people together to have that human connection, that human touch, and all the rest of it. So I think that's the delicate balance that we need to think about, and make sure technology serves its purpose as opposed to it comes in, it runs things. I think technology is there to serve the humans within the organization. I think sometimes people and organizations forget that.
Right. And I think you answered my next question, which was, what are some things to avoid in terms of technology and the employee experience? And to me, the biggest one you said was you can't just replace the human experience. There have to be some touch points with leadership and management and HR, and whatever you call it. It seems to me that that's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting that balance right, I think organizations and people and all manner of different professionals are starting to try and juggle this now. You know, I think about it from my experience. I run digital learning programs around the world, and we have people from all over the place coming on the Hex Practitioner program. But again, we need to think about, how are we really connecting here? Are we having a real emotional conversation where we can be candid, open, and honest with each other? Because realistically, we're only starting to learn how to really connect, across
Right.
things like this. So I think we're doing that, but also we need to, take into account how we continue to get in front of people and talk to people, and we're there and present with them as well, and make the most of those experiences, because they have the potential to be really high impact. Think about organizations where they're often remote workplaces, people flexibly working from all over the place.
Right.
Then we really need to make sure that all hands meeting, that town hall meeting, is serving its fundamental purpose, which is to connect people to what absolutely matters to the business. And some companies are very, very good at doing this. I think of companies like Starbucks and Airbnb of the past, where they would spare no expense and focus really on the right things, which is, celebrating, recognizing people, and making sure people are fully supported within the context of the organization's purpose, mission, and values. I think all of that now comes to the fore, as opposed to, here's a corporate update, or here are the objectives, and blah, blah, nonsense. It's about creating that connection with and between people, and between people and the employer too.
You just mentioned something I want to dive into a little bit, that I hadn't thought about asking you, but it makes sense. Are there some unique challenges with so much of the workforce being remote today, and getting people to feel like they're connected? Because I think that's the key, right? They're connected to the mission. They understand what role they're playing. although they're not sitting in corporate or they're not sitting in an office somewhere. How do you get them to feel that connection to the organization, like they're part of it, and that they understand how they contribute to it?
Yeah, I think you can look at that from the perspective of the employees, because usually when we start doing and looking at employee experience, it's very much, what would, in this scenario, if we're a virtual or remote business, what would enable us to create that connection with you as an employee?
Mm-hmm.
And usually the employees have got the best ideas, I've got to be honest. And it could be the social events or gatherings. It could be community work that companies do together, and they work together in different ways. So there's all these high value touch points where you bring people together for an emotional experience. So it's not, getting together for the sake of getting together. It's saying, okay, we're getting together and we're going to be really present on the things that really matter to us as a business and to you as a human being. I think that's where you can create a really deep connection. And then, they know what they've signed up to. If it's a virtual business and they're going to be working predominantly from a remote location, then
Right.
that's a lifestyle choice in many respects. And,
Okay.
and if it isn't, then the business is headed down the wrong track. Because if they're enforcing that type of working model without the consent and agreement of employees, then it's not going to work anyway. So you're solving the wrong issues.
Right.
So, but most people and professionals, they're smart enough to know they're walking into that type of organization, and it's going to suit them because they've self-opted to be in that type of working model. Whereas if you try and say, okay, we've been a large corporate organization with desks and open plan offices, and now we're saying half of our workforce, work remotely. We want you to work remotely. Go do it. That's a different challenge, because I think we have to manage that in a very careful way.
So my takeaway from that is make those gatherings, make those meetings, those once a month where everybody gets together or comes into the office, make those really meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. And online, you can still maximize the communication in the business. There's lots of platforms that enable, recognition and people to really try and connect with each other in a different way. But I think the key is not to overwhelm people with so many different systems and channels that makes it difficult and confusing to navigate. I think let's have a look at the best technology for our business, which works for our business model, and let's go with that and then double down on it. I think too often you see 50 or 200 different applications and channels to communicate, and it's really confusing.
Oh, and they never get in. I mean, it just, I've been part of that kind of thing. It's
a nightmare, isn't it?
It's just, it's terrible. I mean, we're at least me. I know I'm already kind of at overload with ways I have to communicate, right? And so, like, adding another one, just, I mean,
there's always a big clue in this when professionals start saying, "Look, no one's really engaging with the social media we have. No one's really engaging with the communications platforms. Engagement is very low." I don't think they really buy into it. Should we do some workshops and a roadshow? No, just co-create with them in the first place. Get the right solution in place and double down on it and make it work for you and your business. I think that's a wiser move.
How do you feel about employee evaluations?
Oh, performance reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wonderful. I mean, this is a really interesting area. Because again, the performance experience is a core part of the employee experience.
Right.
Because if there's no performance, there's no business outcomes. If there's no business outcomes, there's no business. I mean, it's a huge thing. There's a massive level of experimentation taking place right now on performance management. We still haven't arrived at the best model, I've got to be honest, anywhere, I don't think, for performance management. I think that's the big news. So I think the experimentation continues. I think my views from seeing what's worked is it's very different within different contexts and organizations. Some organizations, they've let their employees loose to create something that they would automatically buy into. It's just, hasn't worked. There's some organizations that have gone down that track. So what would work for you? And then employees have come up with a very complicated process where there's minutiae detail and it just overwhelms people. So I think my idea on this would be to keep things relatively straightforward and simple. Focus on outcomes, focus on supporting people to achieve outcomes, not just in organization terms, but on the human side of life too. So making sure people are feeling connected and it's a human process to go through. And make sure we're giving people feedback in real time so they can actually do something with it. And then as for ratings and rankings, it's an interesting one. I think we have to look at all the evidence that's around in terms of performance and make a valid judgment on that, as opposed to, he and she and, how people compare with each other. Because the big thing is, if we're really embracing employee experience, we understand that we're all human and we're all running our own race. Right. So in the context of organizations, having people benchmarked against each other, although is a form of evidence, is sometimes very unhelpful and demotivating for employees that are experiencing that. So I think for me, it's going absolutely with personalization and real human centricity, because I'm looking at this person in front of me as a leader and saying, how can I help this person live the best version of their own life? Because it's their responsibility at the end of the day. We can only facilitate and help create some of the conditions to help them flourish and thrive, but it's up to them to actually deliver on that.
I agree. I mean, it's more like a coach, right? I'm helping you, but you've got to do it, right? Something bothers me about evaluations, and I was having a discussion with somebody the other day about this, and the once a year evaluation to me seems absolutely ridiculous.
It's a nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, it's like going to my wife at the end of the year and saying, "Honey, it's time for your evaluation, for the year." That just would not go over well, and so to me, it's got to be this sort of regular thing. I don't know how you formalize that. I've been thinking about this a long time, but the yearly thing just doesn't work for me anymore.
Yeah, the model we're moving to now very much is, if you look at some of the more progressive organizations, they are, it's regular meetings, one-to-ones, as and when required, agreed locally, not enforced really from the center too much, but it's a case of putting in place a leader that absolutely cares about the people and teams that they lead. And that's the big problem. The reason we have to enforce performance management evaluations and all the rest of it is because organizations don't trust the leaders.
Ooh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But aren't we doing a poor job? I mean, to me, overall, in corporate anywhere, it seems like the middle management, the people that we're promoting up, they're not equipped to manage teams. We're not equipping them. We're not doing a great job. We're taking somebody that was great at a technical aspect of something or good at something and saying, all of a sudden, you're in charge of this department or this, whether they wanted to be or not. And we're not teaching management. We're not. Does that make sense, or you think that's part of the problem?
It's a great point. What you said there around people that don't want to be in management, but they have to go there because their promotion depends on it. So we're making decisions based on the wrong information, the wrong motivations, and the wrong objectives for the future of our business. Because if you put one wrong manager in place, it's a disaster for the entire team. And very soon you'll have attrition, you'll have low morale, you'll have internal conflict and people trying to sabotage you. So, I think the key is giving people a great leader who wants to be a great leader. I think this is a big thing. And then coaching and mentoring and facilitation comes into it, as opposed to trying to force people through this very draconian and old school rigid evaluation process. If you had great leaders in place, you wouldn't need any of that really, because you've got a leader focused on the people in front of him or her, and they're always constantly trying to get the best out of the team. And then that should be reflected in the performance. And then if performance is not going so well, then we need to question things locally and say, okay, how are we working together? What are we focused on? Are we focused on the right things for our consumers and customers? Are we doing the right things for you internally to give you the best support possible for you to deliver your best results? So there's no other way to do it other than thinking about an organization as a holistic entity. So there could be things going wrong with the leadership, but ultimately there could be things going wrong with the absolute top team who are making very unwise choices about the way they develop their employee experience and the performance experience.
What are some good resources? We've got your book. What are some good resources for a leader that's listening to this or listens to this at some other point and says, you know what, I haven't done this the right way. Where do they begin? Are there some great resources out there, places for them to go to read, to understand what their next steps are?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. The best place they can go to is to their employees.
Okay.
Bar none. Bar none. Don't go to a course, don't go to university, don't go to whatever. Go to your employees and start having adult conversations with them about how can we absolutely deliver our best performance and our best organization. That's where you learn all of the stuff you need to learn. And then you just apply it. It's relatively easy.
Now, you know what? You're absolutely right. I'm glad you answered that way, because I was interviewing a CEO a couple months ago, and he said, you know, I've only got about 200 employees in my company. He said, my point every year is to go to lunch with them, each individual, at least once a year, right? Go to lunch, take a walk, do something that they want to do during a break or lunchtime, where I can get 30 minutes to ask them how they're doing, ask them about their family, their kids, whatever their situation is, and then to ask them about the business and how they're doing and what they see we could be doing better. And you know what he said? He said that that's where all of his answers in his business come from.
Yeah. That's exactly where we need to be. And, you know, I run programs to support people, but our programs are not prescriptive. It's very much about giving people the support, the challenge, the ideas, the spaces and places to develop the thinking on this. Because it's not easy if you've been a professional and you've been very traditional maybe in your approach. You've been under pressure from your senior leaders as a middle manager, and they expect results quickly. And for you then to go into your team meetings and say, what are your ideas? Well, first of all, people will fall off the chairs.
Right.
And second of all, they'll be questioning, okay, what's going on here? Because there's historical trust issues. So you can't really just do that. You have to do it in a way that starts to build trust from the get-go, as opposed to, oh, my manager's been on a conference and look what they came back with. Again, we see too much of that too.
I've done that.
I've done that. Yeah. I think we've all done it because we're human and we're trying to do the best that we can with the resources and the equipment that we have. But I think with this, it's a new approach. And that's why, you know, people talking about employee experience now because it's a buzzword and all the rest of it. But it's a phenomenal field, and it's so deep, it's so comprehensive, it's so holistic. You know, it's just, you can look at the whole organization with fresh eyes. And that's why it's completely different to anything that's preceded it within HR or employee engagement or whatever it's been. We don't move on from here. We're in the right place now. Experience is the right place to be.
You mentioned some companies earlier, but what are some companies that are great examples and that are doing this right?
I think I see so many around the world. You know, we have the iconic brands at a larger level. Say Microsoft in the last few years has really turned things around, and they've leveraged the employee experience, the way they've developed their organization. I think there's some great examples. Salesforce, again, the way that they connect the holistic employee experience has been impressive work to do, and the outcomes they've delivered have been sensational. Back maybe 2016, we were talking about Airbnbs and others. Starbucks as well. They'll often get talked about and mentioned within the conversation. What I'm interested in are the really local examples, you know, the small, medium, and some of the larger organizations that we don't automatically look for because they're not doing the PR stuff. It's the ones that are just doing beautiful work and you have to go digging for those type of examples. I found lots of them in my book. One was Mint. One was another company in Estonia, where just sensational, the reviews from the customers. So I went to visit, and my hypothesis was that they couldn't deliver this level of quality within their customer experience without having a sensational employee experience. And it proved to be correct when I talked to the staff. One of them, and I remember this statement, he said, "This is by far the best place I've ever worked." And I said, what happened? Why did that? Why? Because his face went red and he was blushing as well. He was like really emotional about it. And I said, you come here and you automatically know people are making decisions based on the best interests, not just of the business, but of the people that are within the business. And I was like, that is just so powerful. So it's those type of examples I'm interested in across all sectors, because people, we can't apply it here. We're not a tech company. We're not this. We don't do free food, blah, blah. It's not about that. It's about putting the humans at the center of your organization and finally working with them in partnership. And you can find examples of that everywhere across the economy. There's no excuses.
Yeah. It's not just about, I think sometimes we think it's about having pinball machines and bean bags and, a pool table in the meeting room. And it really isn't. It really isn't about that at all.
Yeah. We're here for such a short period of time on this planet. I mean, we've got to get this right within our organizations. Actually, I'm glad that corporate America now is questioning the fundamental purpose of, the economic model. Corporate America is saying purpose is now really, really important within our business models, stakeholder management, and treating our suppliers well. This is unheard of within, freedom in economics, where shareholder value has been the prominent thinking within, the economy. So these are all good signs, but I think the proof is in the pudding. Can we make that stick? And can we hold CEOs to account for that now? And equally, our consumers will be judging this.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the consumers are going to push it. I think consumers are going to demand it. I think that's why you're seeing that shift, right? Yeah. As younger generations are now in a position to have a tremendous amount of buying power, and they're not like my parents or your parents probably, which had, this sort of brand loyalty to certain brands, and there wasn't much choice really either. But now we've got choice. We've got choice on just about everything, and so people will put their money where their values are.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much more information out there today about companies and about products that you have that ability to make that decision.
I do it all the time. I do it all the time. Base my decisions, who I shop with, who I buy with, based on the quality of the way they treat their workers, their employees, the sense of social mission and purpose, and broader societal and sustainability outcomes. People are wising up to this now, and they've been taken for a ride. People have been the second class within organizations for a long time. Profit has been right on top. But we're seeing that being reversed now, and it's just a wonderful time to be supporting organizations in this transition. However, I think there are some out there where it's just clever marketing, and that's what we have to be sensitive to. We may see these great organizations standing and virtue signaling, but the proof is in the pudding, and you only have to spend half a day with one company to understand what's really going on. I went to one company. They should know better. They're held up for the quality of their workplace. I had lunch with one of the employees, and within 10 minutes, this statement, this was a high-performing employee, really well attached to the brand and loyal. But they said, yeah, we've got a great marketing function. And I was like, okay, that's all you need to say. So something's not right. And then lo and behold, a few weeks later, there's employee protests, activism, and campus, employees want to unionize. I think that the conclusion I draw is we live in a completely imperfect world. So don't believe the conferences you go to.
Fair enough. Well, hey man, Ben, thank you so much for being on the program today. Good luck I know you're working on a new project. I don't know if you can talk about it, but good luck with that. And congrats on the book. I know it's been out for a bit, but it really did make a huge impact on me. And I think it's really a must read. So the book is called Employee Experience. Go out and get it. We'll put a link on this broadcast to the Amazon page. And thank you for being on the program.
No, I really enjoyed it. Thanks for the conversation. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. And thank you for spending some time with us today. I hope you got something out of this conversation. You can go and find out more about the show and the upcoming schedule and on powerluch.live. Powerluch.live. We've got a good calendar this week. So I've got Damon West coming up actually here in about 30 minutes. So stay on for that. We'll join us again for that if you have time. That's going to be a really fascinating program. And we'll see you in about 30 minutes. And if I don't see you then, hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. But until then, do some good stuff. Do some good work. Thanks.